Palo Alto Networks Firewall. We're back for some more Layer 3 participation configuration. Now we're going to get into some of the services that go with it. So not just the interfaces. That was a starting point. Now we're starting to add things on top of it. So now we've got our basic Layer 3 up and going. We got our interfaces. We got all these guys configured over here. The next part about the participation, if you will, is to get into services, to get into extra things that we have up and going. Okay? So we have our DHCP services. We certainly have NAT that we can do on there. Honestly, I'd probably go ahead and add one on here. We'll call it Layer 3 routing. Because even if we're not going to participate in a routing protocol, which we really don't need to right now, but we still need to have static routes. Okay? If I don't, the problem with any device that is Layer 3 participating, if I don't have a route to get someplace, all I'm going to be able to do is connect the things that are directly attached to me. Well, guess what? The entirety of the internet, so this guy out here, is not directly connected to me. So I need to have a route, at least a static route. So we'll talk about that as well, kind of show how we get everything up and running or get everything up and moving, ready for us to have some fun in here. So DHCP-wise, we talked about the things that we needed to, or that we could do anyway, but really what we're going to get into is setting up a DHCP server. Okay, we'll look at it for our users and for our VPN users. Just get very basic stuff on there. And we'll do NAT the same way. We're going to look at dynamic NAT for right now. Also for those users and VPN users. Okay, servers will handle statically. We'll do that a little bit separately. And then our 00 route. So that stuff out of the way. Jot your notes down. I know you're raring to go, so let's hop on the equipment. Okay, we've got my Layer 3 stuff up and running. I'm ready for my users. Well, sort of anyway. What do we say? We had DHCP. We're going to do DHCP for things, and we're going to do some basic NAT, or at least dynamic NAT for stuff on there as well. So those are two basic things. So all right. So cool thing is we can stay on the network page right here and go into DHCP. And because that's going to be kind of my next thing for where we're at. And I have a DHCP server or a DHCP relay. Now, if your server is already set up and running in someplace else, that's the one you want to use. You want to use the relay. So the firewall will take the things, the incoming DHCP requests, and forward it, or DHCP discovery, and forward it to where your actual DHCP server is, if it's not on the same subnet. If it's on the same subnet, you really don't need to do anything at all. But in here, I want to be the DHCP server for my users and for the user VPNs as well. So we'll kind of give a little bit of information on there. So let's add some stuff. And notice my box comes up and I have a lot of different things that I can put on there. Okay? So this is going to be for the interface. Whoop. Just do a drop down, make it easier. Stop that. Okay. So this is just going to be for my interface for clients. Mode auto. Now remember about that. We have enabled or auto. The auto will function up until the point that it hears DHCP from somebody else. So it's good for a backup or just for a placeholder. I'd probably go ahead and leave it as auto just in case in the future I want to move on to something else. So perfectly fine on there. I can tell it to ping it once it's allocated. I'd kind of waffle as to whether I do this one or not. While it sounds like a good idea from a testing perspective, keep in mind that a lot of new machines have like Windows Firewall and stuff like that enabled, or Mac or whatever you happen to be using, IP tables and Linux, stuff like that, where your pings may not be answered. So all you're going to do is cause yourself some frustration in watching logs and having error messages and stuff. So I don't know if I'd bother doing that, but leave it up to your own specific environment as to whether that actually makes sense or not. Now in this case, we're not going to inherit anything. I would still put a timeout. Okay? My default on here is going to be 1 day. Up to you how you want to do it. Bear in mind that halfway through a lease, devices will try to renew that information. So if every 12 hours you want to have that, well, knock yourself out. Typical DHCP lease time is 7 days, but just work within whatever your environment happens to be or how quickly you want things done. If you have a shortage of IP addresses and a large number of users, I would go for in the minutes. Okay? I've seen some universities that do that. It can be really irritating for the users, especially during busy time, but it is what it is. Okay, so things that we happen to need. Okay, so I definitely need to have my gateway. So this will be 192.168.201.254, and my IP pool subnet. Okay, so what subnet is that going to be in there? Well, it's going to be a /24. Okay, so we can put things. We've got our IP pools over here in reserved addresses, so we can go ahead and set that as we go for what we need to have. Now, DNS is definitely going to be something we're going to want to have. There aren't any that are particularly listed that we've set up on things anymore. We can inherit it from what this device happens to be. Okay? Notice up here, well, we got none, but we can inherit it in there if we had a source set for doing so. Oh. Okay, when you hit escape, that's not necessarily a good thing. So we're going to do my clients, which were 1.1. Auto, got that. 254, cool. Primary DNS. Oop. Alright, I am clearly doing something on my screen here. Why is that selecting that? That's interesting, because that would be a feature of this computer that I'm working on. Well, that's going to be kind of a pain. Alright, well, we'll just leave that for right now. Alright, so let's go ahead and add a pool in here. We can use 201.0.24. Okay, so we got that, and we do want to have some reserved addresses. So this is reserved from the idea of doing static entries. If we put a MAC address on there, notice that it is optional. So if I want to have other reserved entries, so things that I already have, 201.1, just hit enter. Okay. Right now I have from 1 through 10 already defined. Well, I'll just leave it as the fifth one, because you kind of get the idea for it. I'm actually not going to use DHCP on my my VM devices anyway, so not too incredibly concerned about that. Now, and again, as you go through here, the primary DNS, secondary DNS, you can put numbers in there. For whatever reason, the machine that I'm on right now automatically selects something in a drop-down as opposed to letting me tab through it. So that's why we're getting to none. I apologize for that. I don't know why it's doing that. I can do it on another machine and it works perfectly fine. So go figure. But normally you put the information in there. If I'm doing Windows stuff, I can do my Win servers, NIS if I'm doing Linux information, NTP if you want time, POP3 SMTP DNS, things, or DNS suffix, things that you can pass along in DHCP requests. Many of these things you have to specifically request from a client side or have checkboxes in terms of how they function. They're not normal. Usually what you'll get is the network, the netmask, the gateway, and the DNS. Those are pretty much the options that you tend to end up with DHCP. So in any event, I have my information on here. We have stuff set for that particular interface. We'll see it here. I do want to go ahead and add one more. And this will be for my user VPN. So this is 1.5. And kind of go about it in a different way. So again, sticking with auto, IP pool, go ahead and click add. So there's my network right there. Reserved addresses really would just be the 251 that I have on my box. Okay, so got that. There we go. Of course, now it lets me do it. Go figure. Alright, well, whatever. So, we see it does work. Yeah. So, given my options for it, let me go back and edit this bad boy. Okay, I have no idea what was happening before. So, but at this point, we're good to go. We have the information there. That is my DHCP server setup. So go ahead and commit this. Perfectly fine. And we're good to go. So we like this. So far we have our layer 3 interfaces, we have our DHCP, so we can be able to get IP addresses to the users that are going to be connected. So those two interfaces of users anyway. So this is a great start to doing things on here. Now the next thing that I want to do, or kind of get into a little bit, is NAT. Okay, so I want to have my basic configuration for NAT. Like I said, at this point in time, all I want to do is just dynamic stuff specifically for these two things right here. All right, now nothing really out of the ordinary for it, but we're going to get ourselves into the world of policies. So as soon as I click on my policy tab here, that's going to be kind of where we're at for things up and running. So I can look at my basic security policy, which is in our next set where we're going to really dive into and start getting some ideas about. Intra-zone default pretty much permits everything. Inter-zone default, at the same time, pretty much permits everything on there. I'm sorry, denies everything. So actions, we scroll over. Checkmark good, red circle, bad. So we kind of protect everything that we have from an inter-zone point of view, but allow it from an intra-zone. We are going to override this behavior because, of course, right now, you're not going to be able to do anything for moving packets through the firewall. Defeats the purpose of us doing stuff. So, but we'll get to that next. Right now, I want to look at NAT. Okay, there is no NAT policy by default, so we'll have to add stuff in there. And what we're going to have as far as taking a look at things, okay, so I can look at this and again, name things. So client NAT, or better yet, call it client dynamic NAT. So that's our name for it. Description, if you want to get more detailed, you can certainly do that. Original packet. Okay, so where is it? Where is it going to be coming from? So add, we're going to be coming from clients in particular. Destination zone is going to be internet. So that's the only thing I'm going to be concerned with right at the moment in here. Destination interface, we can leave that as any. We can leave service as any. Same thing with source address, destination address. As long as it matches these zones, then that's really the thing that I'm going to be concerned with in there. But I want to see what the translated packet's going to do. So what am I going to do with it afterwards? Now, what I can do, static IP, fairly simple, straightforward. We already talked about these things. Dynamic IP is a per IP basis, first come, first serve. Dynamic IP and port is PAT, or port address translation. Okay? So translated address on here, what's it going to be done to, and what I'm going to add is the internet interface. Okay? So there's an object that's involved, again, by name. And I could set up multiple names if I have other things going on, other IP addresses to add in there. Knock yourself out, add it to your address book. But for right now, this is the one that we're going to do. Not going to worry about destinations, only source-based stuff. So every user who comes in will be port address translated to the internet interface that we happen to be using. Go ahead and add another one, and this would be for my user VPN. Dynamic NAT. Okay. Notice, by the way, we got v6 stuff, or 6 to 4 anyway, not dealing with any IPv6 right now, so it is what it is. Original packet, again, we got a source zone. We'll go ahead and add my user VPN right here, destination zone, specifically the internet, and translated packet, dynamic IP and port, add internet interface. And then click OK. So those are now my policies that will take place from looking at everything I'm going to be doing. Once we get into the policies, once we get into see, my security policy point of view, it's important to understand the translations for when a policy is looked at. Okay? Because we're going to be looking at things from a post-NAT point of view. So if it's done after a translation, obviously I can't really match, dynamically. I'm not going to know where one specific user is or is not at any point in time. So inbound open policies specifically for that, probably not a good idea. Just doesn't make any sense because I can't touch it. So, but we've covered the basics right now. We'll touch policies in another nugget here, security policies, so watch for that. But otherwise, we have our basics for our interface, for our DHCP, and for our NAT stuff. One really important thing that we need to add in, by the way, is going to be a default route. Anytime we're doing all of our layer 3 stuff on here, it's great because we can connect to things that are in our directly attached networks. But if you want to get out anyplace else, well, you got to do some layer 3 stuff. So nice thing is, it's all part of our network on here, and really more specifically, it'll be part of our virtual router. Now, everything that we have is going to be part of our default virtual router, perfectly cool, but what we'll have in here is all the fun things, mostly including static routes. Notice right now, there is nothing, which means, guess what? You're not going anywhere. So all those fun things, we can have everything set up and have great policies to allow stuff. It's just not going to work unless it's directly attached. So, small things to it. We'll add our internet default. So, 00. This will be out interface Ethernet 1.4. to the next hop of 208.81.23.1. Admin distance doesn't matter, metric doesn't matter, whatever. Oh, you're going to complain to me about this. Okay, there we go, abbreviation. Now we have a default route. So let's go ahead and hit OK on that. Everything's cool on there. One static route. We'll see that. And commit this bad boy. Yes. And now anything that you have, per your policies, of course, will actually work. Alright, so we added a few of those fun things in there to get the rest of our layer 3 operations up and going. Okay, so what do we do to help the users out in there? We already had our interfaces set up, so we were able to give them IP addresses. So DHCP server, and we're really able to kind of set things up so that once we get our policies up and moving, that we can be able to route things out. So we did that really 2 different ways. We did both the route, so my 00, out to the big I, the big internet, and we did my NAT policies for them, so my dynamic NAT stuff. So really, other than the security policy itself, which is coming up in our next Nugget series that we're going to get to, other than that, we should be basically up and running for Layer 3 to work through our firewall right now. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.